Hi, I'm Jackie and I co-wrote Cracking the PM Interview, and I'm going to talk about the product manager job. Product management is a really important and impactful role, but a lot of people who would love it don't know about it or don't realize how much creativity and problem solving it involves or how technical and well paying it is. And so today I'm going to start by telling you about my path into product management, and then we're going to talk about what the job is and how you can tell if it might be a good match for you. So here's my career path. I started by going to college at Cornell. I studied computer science and economics, and I was a teaching assistant for a computer science class. And I was on the parliamentary debate team. The way I got into product management is that one of my friends, who was also a teaching assistant and on the debate team, told me that I should be a PM. I didn't know anything at all about the role, and I didn't think I could have a job with the word manager in the title, but he told me, just listen to me, you should be a PM, and that's how I ended up in the role. I interned at Microsoft for 2 summers and then joined full time when I graduated. But after a year and a half, I wanted to move to New York. That's when I applied to Google the first time, and I was rejected. I took a consulting job at Microsoft, and a year later, I reapplied to Google and got into the APM program. After 3 years at Google, I got an email from an engineer I used to work with at Microsoft telling me about Asana. I'd always wanted to join a startup, and so I joined as the first product manager and the 13th employee. And over 8 years, I grew the PM team to over 20 people, and the company grew to over 500. While I was at Google and Asana, people would always reach out to me and ask for help on the Google interview process. And I'd meet with them and I'd tell them a little bit about what Google looks for. With just 10 minutes, I could help people do much better on the interviews, but I realized that this is how privilege perpetuates. I wanted to make sure that people who didn't already have a friend who was a PM would be able to get hired as PMs. And so that's when I started blogging. And Gail, who wrote Cracking the Coding Interview, reached out to me to write the book on product management together. Okay, so what is a product manager? People answer this question in lots of different ways. Some people say it's like being a mini CEO. Others say you're the customer advocate or like the conductor of an orchestra. PMs do lots of big picture thinking, but also get down into the small details. I think the best way to understand the PM role is to think about the product triad, which is the core team of product people at a tech company, and it's made up of the tech lead, designer, and product manager. So you're probably already familiar with the tech lead or engineering. Engineers are responsible for the technical solution. What data structures and algorithms should we use to make this fast and scalable? Then they'll type up the code and write the tests. Designers are responsible for the solution from the user experience perspective. What will it look like? What are the screens and flows and buttons? They'll make lots of pictures or prototypes of how the feature should work. And then the product manager is responsible for picking and defining which problems the team is going to solve, and then ensuring the team solves them. What problems are people facing? What are they hoping your product will do for them? Which would be most impactful or the best bang for the buck? This is a really important role because at most modern software companies, the projects that get worked on are the ones that the product managers say should be worked on. So if you want software to solve the kinds of problems that you care about, you want people like you to be product managers. So to dig in on what product managers do, we'll go through the product lifecycle. In general, a typical day is very collaborative. You'll be talking to your designers and engineers every day and meeting with lots of cross-functional partners like marketing, sales, customer support, user research, and data science. From there, what a typical day looks like really varies by what phase of the process you're in. In the beginning, in the discovery phase, you'll do stuff like visiting customers, doing customer research, looking at data, maybe writing some SQL queries. You'll play with lots of competitor tools. You'll start talking to stakeholders like sales or customer success to learn about what they think the problems are. Then when you're in the definition stage, you're prioritizing all those problems, deciding which ones are worth going after. You'll think about how to frame your goals. Is success more about getting people to try out what you built or more about getting people to pay for it? Then you'll often draw up a vision of how amazing the future could be once you solve these problems, and you'll share that vision to get staffing for your team and to inspire people. Then you get to the design stage. In design, PMs will write specs, which list what features are going to be in and out. You're going to have a lot more ideas about what to build than you'll have time to build them. So it's important as a PM to figure out what to build first. You'll work hand in hand with your designers looking at designs, you'll give them feedback on them, and you might do usability studies to see how customers react to designs. In develop, you'll help engineers translate the designs into the pieces of work that engineers will do. You'll list out what components need to be built and so on. You'll help problem solve as things come up. And then, once things are built, you'll start using it and testing it for yourself. And throughout that, you'll keep stakeholders up to date. Finally, at delivery, PMs often drive the launch plans, figuring out how to validate the work with an A/B test or a beta program. Sometimes PMs will write the blog post, sometimes they'll train salespeople, and in general, they'll be responsible for making sure that everything goes smoothly. Lastly, after launch, it's important to measure how that launch went and see what you can learn from next time and iterate. When you're new as a PM, you might be leading just one product through the product lifecycle at a time. But as you get more senior, you'll have multiple projects. So maybe you'll have one project that's in development and another one that's in discovery. Time management becomes a very important skill for a PM. So here's an example of how that all comes together when we built a timeline at Asana. So we had a lot of customers who were writing in and asking us for a Gantt chart view, like Microsoft Project. But we knew we didn't want to build that because Gantt charts take forever to build and no great teams we knew actually used them. So we dug into the problem to figure out what problem we really wanted to solve. And the PM realized that the real problem was visualizing who is doing what by when, so you can figure out if your whole plan is going to fit together and be done by your deadline. Then we looked around at how people are solving this problem today. And the top thing that we saw great teams doing was sketching out little diagrams with swim lanes on a whiteboard or in Google Slides. So that led us to our vision. What if it was as easy to draw out your timeline as it is in Google Slides, but then everything you drew was a real task that could actually be assigned in Asana? When it came to writing the spec, the PM figured out what all the components we'd need were, not just the timeline itself, but the lines connecting tasks with dependencies, and the unscheduled bucket so you could drag and drop tasks that didn't have a due date yet. And the PM also figured out what didn't need to be in for the first launch. So in the first launch, you could see the lines for dependencies, but you couldn't drag and drop to create them. So along the way, we discovered all kinds of new things, like realizing that people had tasks with just a due date instead of a due date and a start date, and those weren't looking good. So we decided to spend more time to come up with a new design there. The next thing I want to talk about is how you can figure out if you would like being a PM. Being a PM is not going to be for everyone, and there are a lot more engineering jobs than product management jobs at any company, so it's not going to be perfect for everyone. If you like having a really big impact and you don't mind doing work through other people, then you might enjoy being a PM. But if it's important to you to be the person actually writing the code and hitting submit, you might not like it as much. PMing is all about influencing without authority. If you love solving problems for people, you'd probably be a great PM. But if you're more interested in solving technical problems, then you'd probably rather be an engineer. If you're really comfortable making lots of decisions in ambiguous situations where there are tough trade-offs, you might love being a PM. But if you really want someone to give you well-defined work with a clear, correct answer, then PMing is probably not for you. If you enjoy sharing your thinking and coming up with frameworks and telling people about how you came to the decisions you did, then you might love being a PM. But if you don't like having to explain yourself, if you want people to just trust you and not question you, then you probably would not enjoy being a PM. If you enjoy being responsible for a team and cross-functional collaboration, stakeholder management, spending all day talking to different kinds of people, then you'd probably like being a PM. But if you want to be able to focus deeply and be responsible just for your own work, then PM is probably not for you. And finally, if you don't mind context switching, saying no to things, and saying done is better than perfect, PM might be great for you. As a PM, you always have a lot going on, and you need to send things into the world in a messier state than you'd ideally like. So if it's important to you to be able to have time to get things done perfectly and really put the fine-grained polish on things, then being a PM might not be right for you. So if that all sounds great to you, then let's talk about how you can become a PM. So for things that might help you get the job, not every company requires a major or minor in computer science, but it certainly helps. If you don't have one, you can't just hand your resume to a recruiter and expect that they'll call you back. Then, a lot of product managers have double majors, like a technical one in CS and one that's more focused on business or design, like economics. Entrepreneurial side projects can really help you shine and are a place where you can show your product skills. So maybe you've built an app that you're selling on an app store, or maybe you have a business on the side. Leadership roles in general are great, both for your resume and for the actual experience leading people. Anything like residential advisor, teaching assistant, being on a varsity sports team, being the president of a club, any of those will stand out. Then group projects are great because they come the closest to learning actual skills you use as a PM in a college class. And finally, this is just my personal opinion, but I think I learned a lot of skills that made me a great PM in debate. I learned how to listen to other people really carefully and understand the points they're making and how to respond to them. I also learned how to structure communication and persuade people, and those are skills that I use in product management every day. So, in terms of what companies are hiring new grads and interns for PMs, lots and lots of companies. I listed a few here, and you can search to find lists that people have made with links on how to apply. Most of these companies are going to call the role product manager or associate product manager, but a few of them have different names. Microsoft calls the role program manager, and a few places like Facebook and Intuit call it a rotational product manager or a rotational development program. And each year, more and more companies are starting APM programs, so definitely search to see which ones are new this year. And that's all the slides I have. I'm going to share these slides online if you'd like to look back at them. And if you're interested in product management, then check out my book, which has lots of details on what to expect in the interview process itself. Thanks for listening.